I'd like to call the meeting to order and have introductions of people around the table. We usually start on this side, so why don't we start over with Glory, because she looks busy.
Glory Martin, Administrative Assistant to the Superintendent.
Tanya Mears, Business Manager.
Joanne Canning, Superintendent of Schools.
Neil Kamen, representative from Vergennes.
Rich Rathman, representative from Canton.
Chris Cusino, representative from Vergennes.
George Gardner, representative from Ferrisburg.
My name is Kurt Haggis, and I'm from Ferrisburg.
Jeffrey Glassberg, representative from Waltham. I'll mention now I have a work commitment and I will be exiting at 10:07, just to let you all know. Thanks.
I'm Jay Stetzel, interim assistant principal.
I'm Stephanie Taylor, principal at Vergennes Union High School.
Josh Sickles, student rep to the board.
And Emily Martin, Student Rep to the Board.
Okay. So we've put public communication up front. Is there anyone that would like to make any comments?
The minutes for last month didn't record that Chair Haggis made a decision not to allow the public to submit questions prior to this meeting. So I'm hoping that you allow us to get all of our questions answered tonight. The October minutes state, Carol Kaufman asked about
Carol?
Yes.
You're more than welcome to make comments, but we won't be answering any questions.
No answering questions
Not from the
tonight?
public, no.
Okay. So how do we get our questions answered?
Well, since you chose to communicate with me on Front Porch Forum, I responded to you, so it'll be in tomorrow's Front Porch Forum.
Okay. So, the October minutes state, Carol Kaufman asked about the treasurer and her responsibilities, referring to Title 16, Section 226, 426. Chair Haggis referred to her Title 16, Section 322 for the union school treasurer's responsibility. I copied the school board members and I requested an opinion from Secretary Condos and Bill Talbot. Both agreed with Condos's reply, quote, 16 VSA 7.6 provides, quote, the powers, duties, and liabilities of treasurer, board of directors, and clerk shall be like those of a treasurer, board of school directors, and clerk of a town school district. The duties of a town school district treasurer are set forth in 16 VSA 426, and Talbot replied, yes, I agree with him. 322 is for the supervisory union treasurer, separate and distinct from a union district treasurer. For years, this board has been nominating and approving the VUHS elected school treasurer during the annual meetings without discussion or the candidate present. I would like to request the board to take up the school treasurer responsibilities as an agenda item in the near future. All oversight entities in place for the taxpayers should be keeping separate records of revenues and expenditures and monthly balancing their records with bank statements. I would also like to ask the board to consider a vote on electing the VUHS school treasurer through Australian ballot. Do you want me to go ahead with my questions?
You're more than welcome to ask the questions, but they won't be answered in this meeting.
Okay, I would like to ask them publicly.
Okay.
Number one, in best practice, should the A&WSU have direct access to individual school districts' bank accounts. Number 2, the 2012 audit report reported a $483,424 surplus according to the Vermont statute Title 16, Section 567. What half did the 2012 surplus come back in as revenue in the proposed and actual budgets for voter approval? Number 3, in the VUHS 2011-2012 annual report, under the proposed FY13 revenue, there are 2 line item year-ending surpluses. One is labeled audited deficit prior year of $545,244, and another labeled projected operating surplus deficit current year of $148,005. Could you explain why this proposed revenue for FY13 became a deficit on page 31 of the audit? Number 4, in the VUHS 2012-2013 annual report, under the FY14 proposed revenue, there is a $450 surplus. Can the taxpayers expect this to become a deficit in the upcoming FY14 audit? Number 5, I would like an explanation why the special education actuals reported in the audit, the VUHS annual report, and the state records don't agree. And I won't read them all for you, but they don't agree. Do the taxpayers accept close in actual budget reports? Number 6, 2010 was the last favorable variance proposed to actual budget for special education, and it was $259,095 favorable. 2011, it ended with negative $164,912 deficit. 2012 was a $323,416 deficit. 2013 ended with a $666,771 deficit. How did this happen? This is not about the findings of the DOE review. This was available public record. In fact, May of 2013, June, so about a month before it closed, 4 members of the school board was given almost the exact deficit, the numbers that are reported in the audit. And so that concerns me that this board did not catch it sooner than now.
Anyone else? Hi.
I just make a personal invitation to all of the board members to join the 8th grade team on the 21st of this month for their local foods feast. They're going to be putting on quite a show, so please join us anytime during the lunch period that day.
When is it?
Friday the 21st.
Between 10:50 and 1:30.
Okay. If there's no more public communication, we'll go on to the educational presentation.
I'd like to welcome both Chris Goulet, senior partner from AM Peisch, and Jesse Rushlow from AM Peisch, who's here to answer any questions that the board may have concerning the Vergennes Union High School audit for the fiscal year 13. I asked Chris to start by maybe summarizing some highlights from the report, and then the board can generate some questions. So yes, please. Are we where to stand?
Yeah.
right where you were. I don't know if you want to start with the financial statement. It says financial report here.
You know, we have a microphone, so.
But it just records, it's not
Yeah, well, we'd like you to be near the microphone.
Okay. Well, basically in 2013, we've been trying each year to try to go to GASB 34 compliance, which means you have government-wide statements for your governmental activities and business type activities. Since we had some large capital improvements that year, we decided we'd start implementing the capital improvements for 2013 and also start depreciating any assets that were purchased with prior debt, which you had current debt service on, to put it in the GASB 34 for fiscal year 13, so we won't have as a full. In the prior years, we had adverse opinion because you weren't GASB 34 compliant. By doing this, you can do partial opinions. So basically, you have adverse opinion on your governmental wide activities because we don't have all the capital assets on the books, but we do have the big improvement in 2000 that you had the major bond. We put that in service. We capitalized that and depreciated that going forward. Plus, there were some vehicles and some other equipment that was purchased with debt that we capitalized and depreciated. So we started putting some capital assets on the books in fiscal year 13 to give you the government-wide financial statements, which is on page 4 and 5. And that's treating your school like a business. So you have your capital assets and you're depreciating them. Whereas in the governmental funds, you're showing the expenditure for the capital expenditure in that year. But you're not showing they're showing it as a business activity, so you're showing the capital assets with depreciation plus your long-term debt service for those capital assets. The old governmental funds, the debt service was never shown on the statement, only in the long-term debt account group, so you really didn't have, we weren't able to see that as well as the way you show it now. So by putting some of those capital assets in service in 2013, we're able to issue an adverse opinion just on the government-wide activities. We had unmodified opinions for the business type activities, which is the hot lunch fund, and all the governmental funds. We're able to issue unmodified opinions, which is a lot better than just having the full adverse opinion for the whole school where we had in the past. And it's, I don't know if you have any questions on that part of it, that GASB 34 statements, page 4 and 5.
Does anyone have any questions?
I would just like to clarify what the outcome is. So essentially what I hear you saying and the way I read it was the adverse opinion in the audit is driven by the failure to have all of our capital assets on the balance sheet of the high school being depreciated. Other than that fact, there would not be an adverse opinion.
That is correct.
Okay. And the school is in the process of putting those assets on its balance sheet. The process is not complete.
Right.
Okay. I recall that in the prior year's audit, there was a finding and a management response. I didn't see that same analysis. Maybe I missed it, but I know last year we had asked what's the plan for improvement so that we wouldn't wind up with an adverse opinion, and it was to get these assets on the balance sheet. So
I think it was on finding A1 on page 3 of the additional required reports. We still had the capital asset records as a finding, and we had indicated that we had partially implemented the detailed asset listing.
I did see that. All right. Yep.
So we still did include it, but
What page was that again, please?
it's
So
page
this
3
is-
of the additional required reports,
Yeah.
finding A1.
This one. Yeah.
So it is still listed, and I know it won't be fully implemented for FY 2014, but you are looking into the process for so we can have, so they can have it reported for the FY 2015 year.
FY 15. Okay.
I don't know if you have any questions on the remainder of the governmental funds. They're pretty much been the same for, the rest of the reporting is pretty much the same as it was in prior years.
So what's different though, I think, are pages 31 and 32, which relate to the budget, and that's new reporting, right?
Yes, as part of GASB 34, it's required to have a budgetary comparison schedule and a management, what's called a management's discussion and analysis. So basically, typically we'd have the business manager
Yep.
write up a report on your report to everybody.
Yep.
But we disclosed in our audit report that the management discussion and analysis was not included in this report because
Mhm.
due to time constraints,
Mhm.
they did not get that out, but I'm expecting that they're gonna do the management discussions and analysis for the FY 2014 financial report.
Okay, but it's this page where, we have some homework to do, but it's this page where we will get some of the information we need for our homework that would allow us to track surpluses and deficits year by year, budget versus actual. This page allows us to do that, at least for FY 13, right?
Yeah, but what you're looking at for the page where you wanna, cause this page doesn't show you the actual carryover deficit or surplus. That would be on page page 8 shows you the actual fund balance deficits or surpluses on the very bottom.
Mhm.
So on page 8, under general fund, you'll see that there shows a deficit of 542,890. And typically that would be, when you're doing your budgeting, that would be added to, the surplus would be added to revenues and the deficit would be included as
Okay.
your expenditures for the next available
All right, so
budget.
let's stay on page 8 for a second, because I
Yep.
think this is interesting, and I don't know if folks in the audience have copies of this. Folks are okay, page 8, okay, so page 8. So in that left-hand column of general fund, the second from the last item is the fund balance from the prior year of 483, 424.
Right,
So that is shown in our audit as an offsetting revenue in FY 13,
basically, yes.
correct? Okay, and despite that, the year ends with a deficit,
A
but that
deficit,
is,
and most of it was due to the special education.
but just
A
in
lot of
terms
it.
of the ability to follow the what has happened with deficits and surpluses from prior years,
Yeah.
this is showing where the surplus from the prior year was applied
Right,
to FY 13's costs.
that is correct.
Okay, thank you, that's very helpful.
And due to the GASB 34 requirements, a lot of our footnote disclosures also, you would have noticed that they also changed quite a bit.
Mhm.
Some of the wording of it changes with the GASB 34. And it's going to keep changing each year too. And this year there's going to be what's called deferred inflows and outflows of resources, which nobody's used to. You probably won't have many in your school districts, but in towns and supervisory unions, there will be additional columns in the balance sheet part of it.
Mhm.
Just for clarity, GASB is General Accounting Standards Board?
Governmental Accounting Standards Board.
Okay, governmental.
Any other questions on the financial report?
Can I just make a comment?
No.
Do you want me to go over the additional required reports
please.
with the, I'll just, first page is just the basic wording for our reports, and then I'll just go right to the findings that we had. And the first one we discussed, the capital asset records, in order to be in compliance with GASB 34. And going forward, you know, some towns and schools aren't able to receive federal funding because they aren't GASB 34 compliant. So you're trying to get up to speed with the GASB 34 in order to get the federal funding going forward. And also they're going to be looking at that for bond purposes too. So you want to make sure you want to try to be fully GASB 34 compliant.
So how many schools do you audit? Does your firm audit?
Probably do 15 throughout the state.
And how many are compliant with those standards?
Probably the only ones that aren't that we do are the ones in this supervisory union.
Okay, thank you.
And same, you know, not all my towns that I do are compliant. But,
Yeah,
you know,
but
more
as far as
majority of the big
schools
ones
are
but
concerned?
not the small ones. Lack of segregation of duties for agency fund cash. You know, it's in that, you know, with student activities funds and principal accounts, we know it's going to be hard to control those. So really, you really want to try to put some controls in place for those funds that you don't really see or approve. But so if you can have, the school is responsible for implementing internal control procedures to ensure that all cash is received and recorded and that all cash is dispersed for valid expenses. We recommend that cash procedures be reviewed and duties be segregated to minimize the risk of misappropriation or misstatement. And really, it's trying to have an independent person of the whole function reviewing some of the disbursements and the deposits to make sure that everything's in place. The management letter, some of the findings we had for the management letter was, one was approval of invoices and student activities fund. We noted several disbursements made out of the student activities fund without an account withholding slip. That indicates approval by the student advisor for the invoice to be paid. We recommend that student activity expenditures should only be paid once an invoice and an account withholding slip is provided. Budgets and special revenue funds. We know that some of the special revenue fund budgets were not entered into the business office's computer system. This is an important element of the internal control system as it provides a means to easily compare budget to actual results and a means of being fiscally responsible. We recommend that the budget line items be entered into the financial computer systems for all grants. Agency funds, same as prior year. At year end, we were unable to reconcile the total of the ledger cards to the reconciled bank statement and to the school prepared summary of activity. The student activities account had a reconciled difference of $1,201 and the principal's account had a reconciled difference of $82. To ensure that posting to ledger cards are correct, the bank statement should be reconciled monthly to the individual ledger cards. Any unreconciled shortfall should be reimbursed by the general fund. Hot lunch.
I just question. So, if you were unable to reconcile to cash, what do the financial statements reflect? The bank balances or the book balances?
They would reflect the adjusted book balance, and they probably show a due to from or it'd be adjusted through the due to student activities or due to student groups account.
So at some point we'll be interested in knowing what the process is for monthly reconciliations,
Right.
and we'll look to you for some guidance on that, but that should clean that up, and those dollar amounts should ultimately be reconciled
Reconciled and green each month.
and cleaned up and then start clean going forward.
The hot lunch fund deficit, same as.
Yep.
Excuse me.
So I'm gonna be, I do not have skills in auditing or financial language, so I'm gonna ask some really simple questions of you as we go along tonight. I'll start with a really easy one. Could you just tell me what a ledger card is and where it comes to play?
A general ledger, basically if you have an account for cash, that'll show you all your deposits into the account during the year and all
Okay.
your expenditures out of the account.
So
So
like
the
my
ledger card will show
Quicken-
you the whole activity for that account. So you
Okay.
have, typically it's with the computer systems, you just print off a general ledger
Right.
report. It's not
Okay.
a ledger card anymore.
Thank you.
So each account has
Has one, right, understood.
And so that's
Yeah.
why they were called ledger cards. Anything else?
No, not right now.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I'm listening and,
Okay, hot lunch fund deficit was same as prior year. It's had a recurring retained earnings deficit for the past several years. Recommend that the school create a plan to reduce the deficit. If it's determined that the program cannot be self-sufficient, we recommend that an amount be transferred annually from the general fund to cover any annual shortfalls. Which, it's eventually that you'll address it, I'm sure. Employment agreement, same as prior year. We noted that employment agreements do not state the unused sick time is not paid on termination. The employment agreement should indicate whether sick time is paid out. On
So could you explain it a little bit more clearly?
uh,
You're saying it does not
does
be
not
paid out.
state that unused sick time
Is not paid.
will not be paid. I should
Yeah.
say will not be paid out
So,
upon termination.
so you're saying the contract should say that,
Unused sick time will not be paid upon termination.
okay.
Because right now
That's
it's
your
it's open.
otherwise
And
it's
they,
unclear whether it's a liability.
right.
Okay.
Because right now they could say that you owe me this because it doesn't say that you don't owe me it.
You're standing right in front of some union members, so.
Fraud risk assessment, same as prior year. School currently assesses its risk of losses due to fraud on an informal basis. Auditing standards indicate that you should have written formal fraud procedures in place. And I'm sure they can get it through the Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns, the whole implementation procedures for the fraud risk assessments.
Yep.
So does your audit letter then state that there's no fraud risk assessment process, or that it's sort of ad hoc and not documented?
It's on an informal basis, no written procedures on it, but
Does your company offer an opinion as to the quality of that informal process?
not an opinion on that. We don't issue an opinion on the internal controls. That would be a whole separate type of audit.
Okay. As I said, neophyte in some of this stuff.
Are there any other questions?
Now I'd like to ask the public if they have any questions or comments on the audit. The questions will be recorded. If we can't answer them here, we will. If we can't, then we won't.
I didn't take note to what year this was for. Is this 2013?
2013.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to clarify that in my head. I thought that was what it was, but I wanted to. Thank you.
So, Kurt, can I just ask one more question?
Yeah.
This is sort of the basic fundamental one, and because I don't understand the financial legal language as well as I could, I'm just going to ask you it very plainly. You audited our bank books and our balances. What you audited matches reality. That is what your determination is, that our bank books are in good shape, that
We don't look
quote
at,
unquote
we
pass.
don't look at every transaction
Right.
during an audit. We look at the reconciliations, see if they agree with your
Mm-hmm.
the bank balance less your estimated expenditures. We don't look at every expenditure. We analyze them and look at ones that we think may be potential areas for misstatement, and then we'll review that transaction stream within there to look at and go by that. But based on what we've received, the reconciled bank balances agree with the records.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jesse.
All right. So the next agenda item is budget guidance.
So I have a YouTube video that I'd like to show the board, but unfortunately there's no music, so you're gonna have to have your imagination play that music in your head. It's a good backdrop to the discussion around budget guidance for administration.
because it speaks to how rapidly our world is changing. And if the overall mission of the school district is to prepare students for a very different future, I'd like the board to pay particular attention to some of the data that you will read as this video goes forward. So if you could just turn around.
Do you need the sound?
I do need the sound.
Because well, then you have the sound.
You did, yes, thank you.
So I was going to offer you this computer.
Thank you, you're awesome. So how many of you have seen a video like that before? How many in the audience? Yeah, I think this video has been showing for at least 4 years. It's updated on a pretty regular schedule. A lot of the information hasn't changed, but some of it has as well. So when we start to think about kids and the future and our budgets, the idea is that we really need to be putting that student in the middle of our discussions and ahead of the issues that we're going to raise to the board. And so tonight, I can't talk about numbers without talking about kids and preparing our kids for a very different future. Our schools must look different, different from today. Teaching and learning demands a very big overhaul and a transformation. And I believe we're in the middle of that transformation here at Vergennes Union High School. So we want to continue with that transformation and really be thinking about in what ways can we prepare kids for a future that we don't yet know what it will look like yet. So now I have a PowerPoint presentation. Glory, could you help me? Okay, great. This is one that's easy. So budget parameters. The first thing that we need to be thinking about is the ability of the budget to support the vision. And the fact that the board does not currently have a vision, I put in a quote, something that I just shared a minute ago, and that is that it is our responsibility to prepare students for a very different future. We also need to avoid fiscal jeopardy, both short and long term. We need to consider the community's ability to support the budget. We need protection of the public image of the district, and we need to ensure that the reliability of revenue and expenditure projections are present. So what's the role of administration? The role of administration is to develop a budget that meets the expectations and the parameters set out by the school board. If the administration believes that the educational and learning needs go beyond budget parameters, we will inform the board, and we will also inform the board of the impact of those decisions. The administration will present the budget to the school board along with the rationale for how this complies with policy and aligns with the school board's vision. Back, please. So what's the school board's responsibility? To provide clear guidance about the parameters, to allow the administration to make programmatic and instructional decisions to meet those parameters, to solicit input from your community, and along with the superintendent to present the budget information to the community. So tonight I thought it might be interesting for you to look at a little bit of data, and the first is a pie chart that we created. I'm sorry for the small print, but on the right-hand side you can see that the instructional program is the largest share of the pie. Along the bottom is the extracurricular program in orange. Pupil support services reflects the nursing and guidance services. Instructional support reflects the library media specialist. In the green part, you can see the special education assessment. In the brown frame, you can see administrative services. That includes the superintendent's office, which is human resources, business office, curriculum and assessment, as well as technology. The Board of Education has a small slice of that pie. The school administration is reflected in the orange. The business support services, that reflects the treasurer that does the work at that level, and the operations and maintenance, and student transportation, debt service, and the capital improvement fund. So that's your budget in a pie. It's good. It's a good visual to consider. Next. So this is the budget comparison over a period of years from FY11 to FY15. And as you can see, the top blue line represents your expenditures. The orange line are your local revenues. And then the green line is your ed spending. And you can see that things were pretty consistent over the first 3 years, FY11, 12, and 13. Not a lot of change. But in between FY14 and 15, we were seeing less revenues, a slight increase in the budget, and also the ed spending, which was trying to keep track with the overall expenditures. Next. These are your per pupil costs. So you can see in FY11, 12, and 13, you actually went down for a time, and then it was consistent from 12 to 13. But then you see that change again between FY14 and 15. This is the homestead tax rate, which pretty much reflects the previous frames that I was talking about. Next. These are equalized students. Now, for those of you who do not know what that definition is, we receive extra funding from the Agency of Education for educating secondary students, because the idea is that it's much more of a full-service program, so the funding needs are greater. For the ELL population, which is English language learners, and students that qualify for free and reduced lunch. So when you see the numbers of equalized students decline, this doesn't have a very positive effect on the overall budget, because you're going to see less of that support from the state. Next. These are your enrollment numbers. We have declined approximately 85 students over the course of those 5 years. Next year, we do project a slight decline, maybe around 10, or we may stay the same. And the following year, we do anticipate another slight decline, maybe 20 students, maybe less. It should start to level off in the years after that, meaning we do not anticipate dramatic decreases. Next. So what guidance does the school board want to provide to the administration? Obviously, and I'm going to guess that you want us to stay away from a threshold limit. That's when we get we have to spend double the money back to Montpelier. Is the board interested in keeping a certain percent increase in expenditures over the current year? Is it the percent increase after revenues? Is it the tax rate? What are the budget parameters that you would like to provide us with tonight? Next. And then in terms of the next steps, we will have a first budget round meeting for the Vergennes Union High School on January 5th. The second discussion will happen on January 12th, which is a regular scheduled board meeting. If a third meeting is needed, we can do that the week of January 26th. And your informational meeting will be held on February 24th. So what is your pleasure? What are some of your thoughts as you sit and listen to this presentation and think about educating our students for the future?
Joanne, can we rewind to the slide that had the red line showing local spending?
Sure.
Cool. So those are local revenues. The downturn between 14 and 15, does that reflect the reduction in equalized pupils of 20?
It's going to have a number. I think it also reflects some money that you were paying for your construction projects, but you're looking at local revenue.
Right.
I'm sorry. That reflects less money in federal grants as well as state grants. So it's a consolidated federal grant, or if we had a grant that was paying for something that went away. We bring in about $1.1 million a year in grants, and
so that's not, that line does not denote what we are, that's not our local spending line.
No, it's not your local spending line.
Okay.
It's actually, it should be revenues, not local revenues.
And then can we go to education spending, the one that goes up to 15,000?
Go back, yeah.
Yeah, so the steep upturn there, that's a homestead tax rate, just the per pupil.
Per pupil?
Yeah, is the one that I wanted to see. Not that it matters, it's fundamentally the same thing. Fair to say that the jump between 14 and 15 of almost $2,000, $1,700, or 18, that reflects the deficit being baked in to be paid off. Is that correct? And that's translation into a per pupil cost.
Well, it's your costs are going up, your pupils are going down, and when your equalized pupils go down that significantly, that plays into the whole picture.
So we kept, I believe, our total spending, on the budget was down by 0.5%, right, Jeff? Right? So
But our per pupil cost.
But the per pupil cost went up. I'm trying to draw that out and clarify for everybody, including myself, to make sure that my prior historic knowledge remains current and relevant. So if the per pupil cost went up, but our spending that we budgeted went down, then that's the effect of deficit. And any other pieces?
Losing students. And
so declining enrollment, which
because
is the
you're paying more money for less students.
$8,800 per student, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. Okay.
Roughly.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Point.
So,
Any other questions?
Why is our per pupil spending so high? You go any place else in the country and it's considerably lower.
George, I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at this situational analysis, but this is happening all over the state of Vermont, because our student population all over the state of Vermont is going down. And whether budgets stay the same or rise, you've got a very large of the pie that's fixed cost. We have contracts that we have to pay. There's health insurance that goes up on an annual basis. You have requirements that you don't have any control over, and that causes your budget to increase. But when you've got a student number declining at a rate that you do, it doesn't matter that you might be holding spending at the same level or maybe decreasing a little bit. It gets affected by the weight of the students as well as the total number. Now, what I don't have up here is I can't compare the Vergennes Union High School per pupil amount to other surrounding schools, and I think that would be another piece of good information to have. I don't have that tonight. So I can't tell you if, comparatively speaking, when we look at schools with the same demographic, whether we are high or low compared to them, but that data is available.
The really important thing that I'm picking out of what you're saying is that our costs are controlled by Montpelier. Right?
I don't think Montpelier controls our costs. I think they try to.
Well, they don't control our costs. They increase our cost, and that causes our expenditures to go out of our control.
Well, it's a combination, Rich, of, embedded costs.
Mm-hmm.
The cost to turn the lights on in the morning.
Understood.
So, at 6 a.m., Vergennes Union High School, opens up and the lights are turned on and the heat is on and everybody's, ready for school. That's embedded cost. That's cost that, that is already here. If you don't have an increasing population to handle that cost, then the cost per pupil is gonna go up. So there's some embedded costs. The other thing that really has affected our costs is the services that we provide. There are services that we have to provide, and we used to get paid for them, but now we don't. If you looked at the slide, it was local revenues, but it's actually revenues that we receive from state and federal funds. They're drying up. They're going away. So combination of the two means that our per pupil cost has to go up. And it's one of the most expensive in the country. I think everyone knows that.
Just to say though, what George says is relatively accurate. The amount of leverage we have over reducing that cost per pupil or reducing the tax rate, pardon me, we would have to make really drastic reductions in order to bend the curve on the tax rate right now. I think that's true, and that's due to decision making made in Montpelier. And I think in Montpelier they tell you, thank you Diane, that they're facing the pressures of decisions made at the local level on a statewide basis. It is a sort of a balanced system. For better or for worse, it seems to be spiraling upwards, if you could call that a death spiral.
Question?
I just wanted to offer a couple of thoughts. I am going to have to take off, but in response to guidance, it seems to me as though some of the analysis should give us perspective on what a proposed budget does relative to our class size policy, so we have that context. And then in the next breath I'm going to say, okay, I've been listening and I'm willing to accept that student-teacher ratio is not the sole metric, especially when you're trying to change how education is delivered. Therefore, I think it's important to try to identify what the staffing costs are associated with initiatives that aren't about having a teacher up in front of a classroom. So for example, we have taken a leadership role on performance-based graduation requirements, which are now, the equivalent of which are now embedded in statute, Act 77, personalized learning plans. that doesn't happen for free, right? We have to staff that process. What's the cost of that? I mean, I think we need to, if we don't want to get hung on student-teacher ratios and those costs, we have to begin to break out what some of the components are about how we're delivering education differently. So I would like to see some information on that. In terms of specific numeric guidance, we know that last year or for this current school year, we approved an actual budget that resulted in a decrease in budget, yet anyone in this community can tell you that their taxes went up, and significantly, this fall. I'm at a loss as to guidance. I mean, I've heard pretty clearly from folks that they feel tapped out on the tax side. We've now discovered that cutting our budget doesn't really have much of an impact on that. Sorry, I'm at a loss.
Don't be sorry. Thank you very much for staying.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other comments?
Yeah, I mean,
I have some, but I'm gonna wait.
Okay. I do think that we should not leave this topic until we provide at least some sort of
Yes.
a sense, because last year we did a lot of chicken and egging kind of stuff, and it took a while for the administration to get the guidance they needed to move forward. And
Yep.
you know, that all said, I think a really important part of the equation is what is our budget actual looking like, and what might it look like towards the end of the year.
Okay.
Because, you know, just looking at those cost per pupils going up, that driving our tax rates ultimately in Montpelier, you know, if we're looking at another deficit round, you know, just that simple fact of that deficit makes it very difficult to meet the target of not hitting the divided question or threshold question.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that number is, if there's a deficit this year or not yet, but I guess we'll find out at some point, right?
You will?
So, Neil, just to make sure I understand what you're saying, you'd like to know if there's going to be a deficit before we give direction for what the budget for next year will be.
I think it's something we have to pay attention to, because it takes that blue line right there and it pushes it up no matter what we do.
Yeah. So, whether there's a deficit or a surplus, we're still talking about a budget, not.
That's true.
You know, so I just wanted to kind of have that talk. So if there's a deficit in there, then it has to be included in the budget.
Right,
If there's a surplus in there, it has to be included in the budget.
as a carry forward.
Yeah, so, you know, whether there's a deficit or a surplus, we still, you know, the guidance, I guess I'll continue my thought. And what we did last year, we looked at a multiple scenario analysis, what the worst case versus what the best case is. Where'd Stephanie go?
She's running and hiding, my friend.
Well, it's pretty important for her to hear, so.
She's telling Jeff something.
Okay. All right, Jay, I hope you can communicate this to Stephanie, but, so we gave her, okay. I just wanted to wait till you got back.
I'm sorry, I had to give him a construction update.
Yep. Were you here for Neil's comment?
No.
Okay, Neil, why don't you restate
Sure,
that?
just basically, it feels to me important to understand whether or not there's a deficit that is projected and what its magnitude would be in order to be able to, you know, provide the guidance, because that deficit pushes that blue line up. You know,
Well,
surplus takes it down.
that would be something I would answer for you, and we could give you a little bit of information now if that's something you have to provide us guidance, or we could wait until Tanya does her presentation. I think it's fair to tell you that you will have a deficit. We will not know about FY14, the extent of a deficit, until we have the auditors finished, but I can tell you that we are anticipating a deficit in FY14 and in FY15.
Which is about what I figured, because it takes a while to climb back out of the hole when
Right.
you're in it.
Yeah, so
Thank
what
you.
I was continuing with, Stephanie, after Neil was asking that question and making that comment, is that last year, we looked at multiple scenarios. We tried to look at a worst-case scenario, we tried to look at a best-case scenario and a nominal scenario.
Yep.
You know, that, I would like, my direction would be that we take that again and look at it from a worst-case, best-case scenario, so that we have some views into what would happen in the worst case if we had to cut our budget again. Even though it might end up being a 23% increase in Waltham in property taxes. I would consider that the worst case. Or what the nominal I would consider to be a flat line. This is our flat line, and we're not increasing the budget, we're not decreasing the budget, but we know that it's going to affect property tax. But again, that's our part of the formula. And that we need to provide that. But the best case scenario is maybe some of the things that have slapped us across the face in the past 2 years could change as well. So there is a best case scenario in there, and I think we should all take a look at it. David, I'm going to give everyone a chance to talk after we're finished. So, you know, that's what I'd like everybody to consider is, you know, what is the best case scenario? Is it an average increase that we over the past 5 years? You know, I'm a normalized kind of person. I don't like to see, you know, big ups and downs. But I think what we talked about last year didn't work. You know, we gave direction last year to try to keep the budget within 4% of the previous year. You know, I don't think that's going to work this year. I think flatline is going to be the best case scenario. But that's my opinion.
Can I ask a question? When you say flatline, do you mean level funded or level service?
Level service with
yeah.
level, you know, so that's a trick question, so I'm going to.
No, it's a precise question.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm looking at it from a financial perspective. A flat line to me is no more spending.
So.
Zero increase.
0% increase.
Right.
Okay. That's different than level services.
Yes.
So if we go for a flat line in our budget, then that means that we have to decrease expenses to cover the deficits that we are incurring at the present time.
And that's the best case scenario. So there will be a nominal scenario, which was like this past year, which is a 5 to 1%, 0.5 to 1% decrease. And then the worst case scenario would be, I guess, let's look at what it would take with what we know. And obviously we don't know everything, and we won't know everything until almost the last moment. What would it take to minimize the effect on property tax in the formula that we know? That's the worst case scenario, and I don't mean that it's worst case because, you know, people will pay less property tax. I mean it'll be worst case because I think it's going to be a big cut.
Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else at the table? Okay, go ahead, Dale.
Thank you, Kurt. As a taxpayer, when you look at that curve up there, and as Neil said, you know, there's nothing we can do to stop that curve from going up. I think that's kind of what he said. You have to fix that curve. I mean, it's an unsustainable curve. And Joanne went through a very nice presentation on how things have changed so radically in the last couple of years. Kids have had multiple careers over their life. Technology has taken over. We need to know, and I think the people sitting at this desk from the school administration understand that we have to use technology more effectively to teach our kids the things they need to know. But we can't sit there as a school board and say, hey, it's Montpelier's problem. It's your problem. And you gotta listen to the women who are setting up this school system for us, that they're gonna put us on the right trajectory, and you gotta support them. That's the way I see it.
Okay, thank
And
you.
you can't throw your hands up and say, there's nothing we can do about it because it's down in Montpelier. It's right in this room.
So I think what Neil was saying was that even though we cut our budget last year, property taxes in every town in the school district went up.
Yeah, but that's gotta be the focus. You gotta have property tax, you know, let's say we go down to 10 students. We still gonna spend $8 million a year for 10 students? Absolutely not. We have to learn how to bring our costs and our teaching techniques in line with who we're trying to teach, what we're trying to teach them, and using technology to get it there. And we've gotta support the school administration. If they have the vision, looks like they got the vision on what they know needs to be done, you've gotta support them to get them there. That's kinda how I would feel about it.
Okay.
And I think you probably do. But you gotta, you know, Joanne's looking for, come up with some vision statements. Well, one vision statement would be bring the cost per student down. You know, what's the value of the things, you know, apparently the administration is gonna look at all the programs in the school to assess their value. That's what we gotta do, is we gotta look at the value. What's the return on investment for that? And if we need to teach Class A differently than we're doing it today, we need to do that. You know, I don't mean to be lecturing it, but you can't put your hands up and say we can't control this. You've gotta put your hands up and say we're gonna control it.
So the direction I think we're trying to come to, David, is some type of financial control, where a nominal case is a slight cut or a flat line, and a worst case is a large cut. Does that make sense?
I have to watch it Saturday, know what you said. I couldn't hear you, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
You want me to repeat it louder?
No, well, yeah.
I think the direction that we're trying to give is that the nominal case, the case where, you know, what most would consider average is a flatline budget, a budget that doesn't increase. Even though it's already gonna increase in the largest areas of the budget. We know that. So there'll be cuts in other areas. The worst case scenario is there's going to be large cuts. The best case scenario might be that, you know, we have some things change. What possible, you know, without knowledge, what are the possibilities of things changing so that we wouldn't have to make large cuts?
But that's the point. You're gonna have to make cuts. I mean, I don't know how many teachers we have, but if we're not teaching teachers the kind of things that they need to teach, we're gonna have to concentrate on having a skill set within the teachers who can teach hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids with their skills, but through electronics, I think. You know, I don't know, it's the way I would see it done.
Yep.
I mean, that's an impressive vision, and we have to start bending towards that. We do. There's no question about it.
The vision that you're working towards.
Yeah, so my vision is like what Joanne articulated. It's not, my vision isn't bending the curve on the cost, but we'll bend the curve on the cost because we have to, because you're right. So to begin to get there, I'm hearing you, Kurt, say, let's see what a level budget looks like. That's to say a 0% increase. You also, I think I heard you say, let's see what a slight decrease in the budget might look like.
Like last year.
Right?
That would be nominal to me.
I think in terms of understanding what that means relative to the program we have now, I think we also have to ask for a scenario where we maintain the service, like you said, a level service budget. So keep the programs exactly where they are now, you know, and then show us what that means in terms of a budget. I don't know that we could get there. I actually don't believe we can necessarily. But I think it's important that we see the difference between that 0%,
Financial.
sorry, thank you. The zero, I got confused for a second. The 0% financial and the 0% growth in any, you know, in the staffing levels, in the supplies and all that. You understand that there's a subtle difference, you know the difference.
Yeah, I understand what
Something
you're
around
saying.
3% or whatever.
Yeah, in a commercial venture, we're saying we're not going to develop any new products. We're not going to have any new product lines. We're not gonna do anything differently. We're just gonna stay status quo, and we'll try to ride this out.
That's maybe not what they would do with the resource of a level service budget. They may choose to do something entirely
Yes.
different.
Yeah, or
Um,
if you have a level budget in a commercial venture, and you choose not to support certain products, certain services, then those services go away and others appear.
Right.
So I think what David is essentially saying is, let's find some way to do the things we want to do differently. Unfortunately, with the population that we have, we don't have the ability to just say with one less teacher. One less teacher in every classroom, or one less student to teacher ratio. Instead of 11-to-1, let's go down to 10-to-1, and just use that, as a parameter. We don't have the kind of educational philosophy to do that either. So that's why in budget times, I like to stay financial. But I agree, we need to know how that's gonna affect our services, but, budgeting is largely a financial exercise. Hi,
May I ask a question?
yes, please.
So, I'm understanding the 0% increase in the spending, so keeping that level.
Mhm.
So my question would be, I would wonder, is the revenue stream going to be the same? Because if the revenue stream decreases, even if you're 0, the cost will go up.
That's why
And
0% increase is the best case scenario.
But if revenues, I'm just wondering if the revenues coming in is gonna remain the same.
What crystal ball are you looking into?
No, he's just saying it's best scenario, that the revenue's the same and we just
Oh,
don't spend any more.
right, okay.
That's the projection is now.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Joanne.
We don't know what our revenue picture is gonna be, Kurt, and that will evolve after the first of the year and probably will not be secure in time for this budget to be adopted. What we have been preparing for, however, is a reduction in our federal funds. We've been told every year we're going to get less money from the federal government, and I think that that's how we need to operate. Unfortunately, that when you get grant money, the idea is that it's seed money, so it gives you an opportunity to start a program. But here, we have never really moved that program into the local budgets. So we have a fair amount of people that are providing some wonderful services to our kids, but remain in the budget, and though because it's funded through this revenue, and we're being told that money is going to be diminished. So I am the kind of person that usually budgets very conservatively for revenue. If we get more, that's great. But we will not find out what our final consolidated federal grant amount allocation will be, and probably till April or May. And that's very late in the year.
Okay. So Diane, to answer your question, this is what happens every year. We have to guess. It's an educated guess, a guesstimate, if you will. But we have to guess what the revenues will be.
If I may?
Are you finished?
Yes, sir.
Yeah? Go ahead.
I think that in the long term, what we need from your office is a plan to be able to teach more kids with less teachers, which means that you have to do it through an electronic means. I'm sure that things such as presentation screens like this allow a teacher to reach more kids. Now, I realize that decreases the amount of time that they have for each individual. But I don't see how you can continue to cover the same amount of kids with the same student-to-teacher ratio that we currently have.
We have a class size policy, and as I said in my presentation, we will consider both the board's goals as well as the policies when we're making decisions.
Rose, did you have something? I'm sorry.
I did a ways ago, but I passed over, so forget it. Thanks.
Okay. Go ahead.
You know, Jeff said something, I think it was Jeff that said something kind of key. It was, you know, what do those new things cost? What do the PBGR, the implementation of the PBGR cost? I might come at it from a different way and offer this guidance challenge. Just like you're saying, you know, what is the design that you would propose for this community to move it forward? In recognizing that, which we fight with every year, we have a great opportunity with fresh leadership, with fresh ideas, to look at different models. You know, maybe it's what David is talking about. Maybe it's not all the way to what David is talking about, but you know, maybe it gets you there. It's technology, it's whatever it is. And I'd love to see that proposal as well.
So administration, as I pointed out earlier in the presentation, wants the board to provide us with financial guidance. But even with that financial guidance, it will be my responsibility with the high school administration to lay out the impact of that guidance. So yes, there is a vision. I mean, you know, I feel obligated to tell you what we need, and it's your job to tell us how much the taxpayers will pay. So we've got unique responsibilities here. Now, I know the board and the community has values, such as, you know, we value the performing arts, we value our core programs, we value so many things. At some point, we're going to have to take that guidance and balance it with the values and come out with a product that you could present to the community and feel good about that. So we will let you know what we think we need to run a full-service program. We recognize that that would likely not happen, but it's not without letting you know. It's kind of like the buildings issue. You know, if you don't take care of your building over a period of time, it falls apart, you shouldn't be surprised. Well, we want to take care of our students and prepare them for a very rich future that they're going to have as a result of their education here. And we will tell you what we need to do that. So you will get that from us, and then together we'll have to figure out what that balance is.
Yeah, and between, you know, just continuing that thought, between January and March, it's our job together to sell that budget. And, you know, that's where the communication that we talked about last year comes in.
You know, just on that topic, Kurt, I just want to thank you for just giving us the bones of the budget and the pie chart. I mean, last year, I, as the board member, had to assemble the budget fact sheet for our citizens.
That is a role that our office
Look forward to that, yes.
will serve. And if anyone wants a copy of the PowerPoint, just email me and I'd be happy to send it to you. Thank you. I think we're going to deliberate over the minutes that Glory took and take the budget guidance into consideration, so thank you for that.
Any other questions or comments?
Kurt.
Yep. All right.
I just want to thank Joanne for that presentation and your presentation. When I saw that and see things like that, it gets me very excited about education and why we all are in this room and what we do with our kids and students every day. I can't help but feel that it's at odds with the whole bottom line business, and that is where I get really worried about what the future holds for all of our kids and future students. So I would just ask the school board to keep that in mind for the future.
All right.
Did you get something?
I got something.
Okay.
I don't know what. No, I got a lot.
You can translate it if you
No,
want.
no, pick it up. Thank you.
Do you have any other questions?
I don't think so, thank you.
Jay? No? Okay, student representatives.
Right, so first we wanted to apologize on Tia's behalf. She is at a musical practice right now. She's excited and also very disappointed that she cannot be here, but she's otherwise involved. So for academics, first quarter grades recently closed. Students are now in the second quarter, and grades have been posted on Power School for both high school and middle school students. NHS members were recently selected. There were 4 juniors and 5 seniors. Induction is the 19th, and we had our first meeting last Monday. The musical is coming up. It is this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Thursday and Friday's performance is at 10 o'clock or 7 o'clock, and it is $10 for students and $12 for general admission. And then Saturday there's a matinee at 3 o'clock, and ticket prices are the same. Last Friday, or 2 Fridays ago, Emma Gardner and I attended the Roland Fellowship Conference with Ms. Kirkcaldy and a few other high school teachers here. It was a presentation involving the Roland Fellowship Program, and we heard from the keynote speaker, Angela Duckworthy, who talked a lot about grit in education, and that was kind of what the whole day was focused on, was how do we provide grit for students and teachers in the classroom, and how does that work with change and implementing positive kind of environments in the school. Emma and I attended 2 workshops, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. We heard in our first morning workshop a private presentation from Angela that just talked about how to implement, like again, that grit in students and in the school, and how to kind of connect the bond between teachers and pupils. In the afternoon, we heard a presentation from a young gentleman who is part of the curriculum board in Rutland about implementing positive change, and Emma and I and Miss Olivier talked about the PBGRs at our school, and started talking about personalized learning programs, which was really neat. And other than that, Josh has the rest.
So fall sports officially closed, I believe last week or 2 weeks ago. Winter sports kick off officially next week. So open gyms for basketball, boys and girls have been underway during the weekends after school. Everybody ready? This coming Wednesday, so not tomorrow, but the day after, the ASVAB test for the military testing occurs over at the Armory. So that's a 5-part event test, not preparing you, but kind of letting them, if you're interested in the military, letting them know what your specific skills are. So that's interesting. I'm taking it. The school board wanted to know about the vibe of the school. We talked about that last board meeting. So we're super excited about the pasta bar at lunch.
Yeah.
No, it really was that good.
It's something they tried out. I don't know if any of you have heard about it or anything, but there
I heard
was
about the salad bar, but not the
pasta bar.
It is our cafeteria program. I think it's Fresh Picks. It was kind of like an attempt to implement a potential new aspect to our lunch program. And I think it was positive feedback across the board from students and staff.
Yeah. So it was.
You can eat, right?
Still on his carb high.
It was it was kind of like a. There was 2 chefs set up with their stations, and they had 4 burners, and then they had pans going all the time. So you'd kind of walk up and be like, what kind of vegetables you wanted in it, and then what kind of like Alfredo sauce or pasta sauce.
And meat.
Meat.
Awesome.
There's plenty of meat there.
Yeah.
And then they all threw it together, and then there was like red pepper flakes and garlic and anything you could throw in there. So it's kind of like a mash of everything you wanted.
And the school smelled great for the rest of the
yeah,
day, so that was a huge plus.
That was just a one-day deal?
I hope not.
Well, they're gonna do a noodle bowl kind of display, and then a stir fry later on too. So they have all the ingredients laid out, and then you pick. It's sort of like make your own. Pick your own or there's a word for it. I can't.
It's kind of like. Has everybody ever been to Kodos before?
Mm-hmm.
It's Kodos.
Yeah.
In the lunchroom.
Yeah.
Do they flip it?
They do flip it. They do flip it.
George, I think they have a message over there in the kitchen a little bit.
Yeah.
Sounds that way, doesn't it?
It's pretty cool.
And if Tia was here, she has been obviously sending out applications to colleges for all seniors right now. This is a very exciting and very nervous period. A lot of applications were due November 1st, some are due December 1st. So I'm sure at the next board meeting she would be excited to talk to you about that. But right now everyone's in musical prep, and the entire student body is very excited to see their friends and peers put on this kind of comeback show for the high school.
Especially that's in the new auditorium, for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be good for the community to see kind of what the money went towards.
People liking that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard nothing but good things.
Go ahead, Chris.
What's the musical?
The Little Mermaid.
Yes, the junior version. The senior version is not available yet, but it's the full cast: Ariel, Ursula, Flounder. Everyone's in it.
They didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't ask me for the main role, so.
Yeah.
We have about 100 students involved.
Glenn being King Triton?
I know.
Seriously?
It was a
No.
set role from the beginning.
So 20% of the student body is
Involved in some way, either in the cast or through tech support.
Yeah.
great.
And it is amazing to see like students that spend entire nights there, bring their homework and have dinner there. So it's a huge effort, and it's an amazing payoff when the end of the production comes together.
And I heard tickets are on sale in the lobby tonight.
Yeah, you better get on those, because I went and bought mine today, and there was 10, 11 seats left for Friday night.
Yeah, Friday's almost over.
Yeah.
Great. Anything else?
I think we're good.
That's it.
Thanks for the ride.
Thank you.
And now marks Tanya's first report.
We're skipping superintendent because it's as presented, thank you. If there are any questions, I'll answer them, but hearing none. Tanya.
So, Jeff?
Thank you.
Is that his name?
Jeff
He
Fletcher.
sent me a kind of a starting spreadsheet that he thought might be working to kind of take the whole expense budget, and I'm sorry that it's small, I apologize. And it's kind of taking the whole expense budget and bringing it down to layman's terms, and so you guys know what each department really looks like. I just wanted to preface this by, this is my 5th day of work. So I got as much done on it as possible. And unfortunately, there's no projections yet. I'm still trying to get the ins and outs of the workings and what everything is in the budget and where the spending is. I have pulled out a few areas that they need some research. I don't believe that they need to be in these salary lines. And, but I still need to do some research and figure out where they need to be. I do believe that in the short time Joanne and I have been working together, and I've gotten some guidance from Stephanie, there are going to be some shortfalls in some areas. One is the transportation area. There was, in salaries, there was a position that was unbudgeted. So that is going to be,
Really?
Yes.
yes.
There was a position that was not included.
There is also going to be a shortfall in your fuel from what was budgeted. It looks like the original amount was cut from the original budget, or I'm not really sure, other than I do know that there's going to be a shortfall in it.
Fuel prices are going down.
We understand that, George. When we look at the pattern of spending over the last couple of years, both heavy seasons and low seasons, it is our projection. Obviously, we don't know until we get there, but there's enough of a difference that we feel concerned that we won't have enough fuel oil. And the other area, I'm just going to add to what Tanya was saying, is that you heard tonight from AM Peisch that we have had multiple years of deficits in food service, and that will continue in the current year as well.
And those deficits have never actually been addressed or cleaned up. So there is an amount there that is a significant amount that will need to be addressed in this current year coming up budget.
We've been carrying that for so many years. That needs to be dealt with, but I would not want to deal with that in one fell swoop in such a way as to hold the programs harmed. But,
So-
your call,
No, no.
not mine.
So we're not prepared to lay this out tonight because
Yeah.
we really feel we need to have an audited number to talk the real scenario. But there are different options that the board can take, and Tanya and I will lay out those options at a meeting in the future.
Thank you.
So is the food service part of student services?
No, it's actually not in there, in that, it's actually its own enterprise fund, and
Okay.
it's not part of the general fund. And that's all I laid out for you right there.
Okay.
The big number actual to date in special services with zero budget, that's because that actually sits in the district budget, right?
Yes,
So we're just
there-
tracking that
well, there-
number in our,
No, there's actually some expenditures in your general budget that A&W would actually have to reimburse the high school for. There shouldn't be any special ed expenditures other than the assessment piece. And the large discrepancy you see there is one of the assessments was coded to the wrong place. So we had to move it out of there into the right place, and that's where you see the differences.
an assessment, so that's an individual student assessment? I don't need to know
No,
any
the,
details.
I'm sorry,
but-
the assessment that
Oh.
the A&W bills to the high school.
Okay, thank you. Okay, gotcha.
Is there any questions on there? I promise that, as the month and couple of months goes on, you'll have much more detail and much more forecasted, where accurate information where you should be.
Have you had a chance to meet, sorry, Kurt, okay if I keep going?
Yep.
Have you had a chance to meet with the finance committee yet?
Let me address that. The Finance Committee met at 4:00 in the afternoon on Friday, and they did not have a quorum. Stephanie was actually the only
Saw
other
that.
person that was able to go. So the information that you got from Laurie is not official, but it does address something that I'd like to mention with the board. Laurie said that you would have to wrestle with a $1.4 million deficit, and what she's referring to is that at the end of last year, the board received several financial reports from Kathy Cannon. I believe there was a report that was given to you in the month of June that shows a balance at the end of the year of $1.4 million in the deficit. That was without revenue. That was not any revenue at all. It was just expenditures. So I want to caution you not to be too upset about that, because it's the revenue picture that really helps you to understand. We will see a deficit in FY14, we know that. We have an unaudited general number that we think is pretty close to the actual. But I just want to also mention that it's not going to be confirmed until your audit report is completed. And we're going to see that deficit because of the food service, because of it was a larger number. The deficit was a larger number than you had put revenue in for the current year. It wasn't $540,000, the loan that you took out. It was more than that.
So are you saying that the $1.4 million that was shown as a deficit was not actually all the deficit? There is some income that offsets that, but you don't know how much?
No, I do not. I haven't dove into the 14 stuff at all. I'm waiting for the audit to come back, and then I will be able to digest that information. Right now, I'm just trying to stay in current year and move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Under past practice, I would push and push to get that number out of you, but I'm not going to, understanding that you're just getting started and you're kind of navigating your way into somebody else's financial accounting practice. And so
Thank you,
I wish you good speed, and I can't wait to hear next month.
I'll be the bad cop. Do you think we'll have it by next month? We'll have that information?
The auditors are here every day until the 21st.
Yep.
They are still telling me and Joanne that they're still on schedule and that we will have an audit report
Okay.
before budget season.
And I've made that really clear, we have to have it. The 17th is the week before school vacation, so I'm gonna press really hard for that, for the board at least to have a copy of that, and then the next step would be that we would set up a meeting for you to review that with your
Great,
auditors.
thank you.
Okay, I have to ask. Line 2300, and I'm sorry, but I'm pushing without glasses on. Board of Directors, annual budget 2.75,298. Sounds good. Hook me up, but I don't think they elected me for that.
That's included your board responsibilities, your stipends, and it also includes the assessments to the supervisory union. They're all coded under the 2300 code.
Okay,
So that's your assessment and
okay, all right, thank you.
So we can't plan on a trip to Aruba?
No, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
man, we were doing better than that. Big dollars.
Yeah, you may want to think about a name change there.
Yeah,
Yes,
well, I mean, this
I-
is not, if this is where the pie chart's coming from that we just saw, that seemed to be elsewhere, but,
Okay.
right, anyway,
Thank you.
we're very sensitized.
Yes, I understand. I appreciate the direction, though.
I apologize, Joanne, I didn't mean to skip over you, but.
No problems. And the same with the principal's report. It stands as presented, and if there are any questions, Stephanie will answer them. But
Yeah.
we're hoping that it's helpful for the board to get that kind of information ahead of the meeting.
Yeah, it is very helpful. Yeah, are there any questions for the superintendent or the principal?
Just once again, want to say that I really like seeing this stuff in advance. It is super helpful.
Good, thank you.
But I'd just add, related to the food stuff that Josh was talking about, there is a food service committee that's been started, and those of you that see the e-news that comes home weekly, we have a few students who are on that. Teacher came to the first meeting, and that's where the salad bar thing that you probably heard about came in, where people can order a salad ahead of time with what they want on it. It can be made, they can just pick it up, or they can basically get it made for them. But that was a suggestion that came out of that committee, and Joe Allen took that and ran with it, and and they're trying to do some things that the pasta bar is something they had tried at some other schools, and so they're trying to bring some of those things here, cafe services, that is. So, one of our students on the committee also sent out a survey just to see how people feel about the food service and those sorts of things, and she's gotten a number of responses, so we're going to review those before our next meeting next week.
Great.
So.
Excellent.
The, are the minutes not the minutes, the agenda and your reports posted
That would be Lori.
online?
They're not. Oh, yours not you. Is that the high school? Okay.
So the packet that we receive,
Yes.
with the agenda and your situational report and your write-up, if those aren't posted online in advance, and I'm asking are they or aren't they, I'm kind of looking as we go, but.
Well, they're not posted at the VUHS website right now because we're in the process of moving to a new website, newly revised. But I don't know if they're posted at the ANWSU website.
I've never received them from anybody to post.
Well, they are here.
Food service?
Oh, no, I'm talking about our overall packet for the.
The packet.
Yeah. Just with the change to your report on paper and your report on paper,
Yeah.
having that available to the public is, in advance of the meeting is good, so yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else for the principals or the superintendent? We already talked about the finance committee. Are there any board members' communication? Yep.
Couple things.
Yep.
So I'm not sure whether it was my constituent or not, but I was copied on an email asking about the decision-making process underlying the NHS. The only thing I care to know is whether the individual got a response.
the individual did get a response, and he's exchanged another email, if it's the one you're talking about, and I think we're all good.
I don't need to know any details, I just, that. And there's rumor out there about a change in the budgeted, operational budget for Walden. That's getting a lot of sub-hubs, so did something change from the budget we passed? If so, that's your call.
Can I address that, please?
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that we have been very careful about expenditures. And we just reported to the board that we do expect that there will be a deficit at the end of this year. The reason is transportation, a budgeted position, food service, and we currently don't know where the negotiated agreement salary increase is coming from. So that could be another area. We're questioning that. So in the spirit of looking at transportation for field trips, we have given guidance to the faculty that we're going to look at all requests. And that is across the board. It's not for one program.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I just wanted to ask.
Yep.
And don't misinterpret the line of questioning, David.
Any other board members' communication? I did attend the Vermont School Boards Association annual meeting with Joanne and Jeff and Michelle. It was called Face the Challenge, Lead the Change. And there were quite a few good workshops. There were some excellent speakers. There was some interesting presentations. It's probably the first time that this board member has come back from the annual meeting with a less than enthusiastic posture. So it does not appear like there's a lot of support for some of the changes that are going on, some of the unfunded mandates that the state has given us. So keep that in mind, unfortunately. We're being asked to do a lot differently, as David has expounded upon, but it doesn't look like there will be any additional support for those things that we've been asked to do. I talked to a lot of people about our PBGRs, and there was a lot of great comments about it. People were amazed that they were posted on our website. They're like, "Can I get a copy of that?" And I'm like, "Well, it's right there. Feel free to take it." There was a lot of enthusiasm about things that could change, but not a lot of enthusiasm about things that will change down in the near future. So I just would like to say, though, that it seems like every time I go to this meeting, I thank the administration and I thank the people who work at Vergennes High School for all the hard work that you do, because for all the financial issues that we might have at this point in time, there's a lot of schools out there that are in serious trouble, and they're not taking action to solve the problem. But you know, I want to say that I'm very proud to represent Vergennes High School at meetings like this because of the work that you do. So thank you. Anything else? And we're on to the action items, and we're doing a great job. We're right on time. The approval of bills and directors' orders. Because the finance committee didn't have a quorum, we don't have any action items that came out of there, but we do have a recommendation that one of the board members can make. And if you'd like to go through what you found, George, that'd be great.
one of our board members, Lori, reviewed the bills, and with the exception of a Green Mountain Power bill, and she said you were gonna have some information on that.
The only information is that it is within a couple $100s of our usual Green Mountain Power bill. We spend between $8,000 and $9,000 a month.
Okay.
So I think it jumped out, but it's probably because she hadn't seen one before.
Okay.
I do have the invoice if you want to look at it.
She found a $6,467.25 quarterly invoice for a non-special ed student in the Diversified Occupation Program. The cost wasn't included in the budget. So, do we know why it wasn't budgeted, or?
Well, it would have been sort of folded into the special ed fees
Okay.
in the past, but now special ed, and that would have been inappropriate, but it probably would have been charged there anyways, and just would have been not reimbursable through the federal grants we get. Now that special ed is assessed at the central office, the arrangement to send the student to that program was made under the prior administration. So we basically have a student attending, and we are on the hook for the tuition. So we have to find money. When we created the budget last year, that wasn't really an obvious situation. So it became clear as we moved special ed spending to central office. So now, for the 15-16 school year, I have to build in the tuition fees for that student into the general ed program.
So that's something that'll be taken care of in the new budget, but for.
Right now, it's an additional unbudgeted amount that I'm trying to find money to cover.
Okay.
This year.
So this is not a special ed student, not getting reimbursement under title whatever.
Yes.
But going to DO.
Yes.
So clearly the student needs to service a DO, that's
Yeah.
fine.
And I'm a little uncomfortable talking about it because about identifying
Enough
issues.
said, yeah,
So
it strikes me as a little bit surprising, so, well, it struck Lori as surprising too, so. So be it.
Yep.
Yeah,
These are the
team-
things you all roll with.
The team made a determination that that's what
Yeah.
the student needed.
And the student was accepted
Yep.
there. And there's a process for doing that. Again, it was a decision that was made under previous administration.
Okay, so outside of those issues, the total bills and director's orders are $920,298.54. Of that, there was a debit service principal of $420,000, a debit service interest of $107,792.12, and a construction cost of $313,479.50. That leaves the bills and director's orders excluding those items of $79,026.92, which seems to me to be reasonable.
Okay, and before we have any other questions or comments, could someone
Second.
provide a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, and it's been seconded. The figure is $920,298.54.
That's correct.
Okay, any other discussion? Comments
This is
or questions?
a great summary, extremely helpful.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor, and it's been seconded. Are there any other questions? This is something I picked up at the VSBA meeting. Are you all ready to vote?
Yes.
It's kind of a way to close the door on comments and questions. And it was a very effective way to finalize the discussion. Hearing no other comments and questions, I'd like you to signify your approval by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Thank you very much. So the next action item on the agenda is the minutes of the regular meeting of October 13th, 2014. You should have received these in your packet. And I'd like to entertain a motion to approve.
I will move that the minutes of the October 13, 2014 meeting be approved.
Second.
I believe that was Richard. Any comments or questions?
The breakdown of all of that.
Addenda, cordenda? I made that word up. Addenda's a word, but cordenda, it's not. Hearing none, I'd like to call for a vote. Are you ready to vote? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Are there any opposed or abstentions? Thank you. There's a policy review.
Actually, I did not bring a scenario tonight, Kurt, because I thought we would have other pretty hefty agenda items, so I'd like to reserve that to the next time.
Okay, thank you. And the next item on the agenda for action is a short-term borrowing request.
So we have some challenges currently with cash flow, and we also have a bond debt that we need to pay in the amount of about $500,000 by November 20th. So it will require that we borrow additional money. It is our belief in reviewing all of the schools within the A&W SU that none of the schools borrowed enough money to bridge that time between July 1 and when money is going to start to flow from the towns. So we're going to rectify that last year, but in this case, we're experiencing not enough borrowing from the beginning. The fact that we've got this bond vote, this bond money that we have to pay back by November 20th, and the fact that, what was my other point in that? There was a third point and it's gone. So we need to ask the board to approve of a short-term borrowing request, and Tanya can give you the dollar amount that we're looking for this evening.
When I revisited the cash flow worksheets, according to statute, you can borrow your largest deficit plus your next month's expenses. It was not, your original line of credit was not nearly enough. So there is, the bank has approved us of borrowing an additional line of credit of $550,000. This will make our bond payment on November 20th and leave you a little extra cash until the money starts flowing in from the other towns. So I have all of the paperwork here. You just need to make a motion and then.
So what's the term of the note?
I'll make the motion to.
Yep, thank you.
I'll make a motion to adopt, or to issue, what is it?
Allow the administration to apply for a short-term
Loan in the amount of $550,000.
I believe this will
Somebody
bring
wanna
you,
second
this
that?
is also.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay.
second. We need a second.
He did.
He did,
did.
thank
Cool,
you.
thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, a friendly amendment to your motion. I'd like the term to be in that motion.
I was waiting to hear it.
Yeah.
Just wanted to get the discussion going.
It states here that it will be due back to the bank on the 5th day of January with an interest at the rate of 1.55% per annum.
So the initiation date is
November 12th.
November 12th, so it's approximately 90 days?
Yes.
No, that's, no, 60 days.
60 days.
60.
Okay. Neil?
So what's the total interest gonna cost?
No, friendly amendment.
Oh.
To include the term in your motion?
Oh, accepted.
Thank you.
Of course. I thought you were,
No.
intuiting my next question
No.
without,
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor, and it's been seconded, to allow the supervisory union to borrow $550,000. And the term is approximately 60 days. Is there any discussion?
It was my understanding that the banks wouldn't lend us any more money.
There has been some discussion about that, George, and I think the response that they've given us is that they've been very impressed with our ability to manage getting 3 audits done in a very short period of time.
Mhm.
They've been impressed with the administration and our response to any questions and concerns that they've had. And they are willing to work with us, at least for the current year. We don't know going forward whether we will be able to apply for a line of credit with that particular bank for our going forward, but at least for this school year, they're showing good faith,
Okay.
effort to work with us.
Thank you.
Is there in short-term borrowing, it's my understanding that at the time that you borrow the money, for it to be a short term, that you have an amortization or a way to get rid of the debt quickly? Do you have that plan?
I can get rid of this debt easily, and because you will be receiving special ed money, in December,
Okay,
and that will help out.
okay. So you do have a plan?
I do have a plan, yes.
Yeah, okay, great.
And there was a question about how much does this actually cost us?
Well, the principal is $550,000, and they didn't actually give me a breakdown of what the interest is going to be totally, but it's 1.5%, 55%.
You got it.
$2,000 and change.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Are you ready to vote?
Just another question.
Yep.
So, been doing this for a little while and not accustomed to coming back for short-term borrowing in the middle of the year. We've always done it in July. It's always been taken care of and dispatched in, I think, September or October, a big payment, which we just did. So what you've found is that all the schools have been under borrowing for their anticipation notes?
Yes.
Yes, they are not gonna have enough money to borrow to cover them until their state payments come.
Okay, so nobody in the room would be able to answer the question, why have we not seen that before in prior years? But anyway, so be it. Is there any chance that with the bond payments moving forward, we would have to do this again during this year and get into one of these things where we're borrowing from one credit card to pay the balance on the other?
I have not seen any evidence of that, no. When I did my cash flow, it looked fine, other than this month.
Okay.
Everything is gonna work out.
Do you know what the difference is between the amount that we borrowed in July and what was borrowed in the previous July?
No, I don't.
No.
But I will tell you that what complicates this is that the money that was borrowed in July, part of it was used to pay off the previous year's tax anticipation note.
And that's where also the shortfall comes in.
Yep, I understand that.
So you had a tax
So-
anticipation note due June 30th.
Mm-hmm.
They went and got a new tax anticipation note starting July 1st. They took part of that to pay off the old one. So you were left with a remainder to get you through the year, which is not enough.
But you guys are the new A-team.
Yes,
We're
and
gonna solve this problem.
This is not gonna happen
This is-
anymore.
No, I mentioned in a previous meeting, this is gonna take 2 years to dig out of, but we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. It's just gonna take some time.
But
You
it,
know, I think it's the A+.
but it all takes money, and money is something we don't have.
Mm-hmm.
But George, we will have a plan and some options for the board going forward. And I know it's hard to wait and not have that plan immediately in front of you, but we really want to have the audited number, a clear number, so that we can map out a clear plan. And the board will have options. You will have 2 or 3 options from which to choose from.
I understand completely that to make a nice cohesive plan that we don't have to go back on to cover later on, you have to know where you're at in the first place. I totally understand that, but it's just discouraging at this point.
Yes, I understand that.
Any other discussion on the motion on the floor to borrow
Yeah.
$550,000?
I guess since it's relevant, I'll just, and then this will be my last question.
Okay.
But I read in some of Lori's communication, the documents that she circulated around the Finance Committee, that we're putting together numbers of what the total cost has been for additional financial services that we needed to hire to get to the point where we've got you now, Tanya.
That is actually
that
coming in,
along?
that will come in the board report at the A&W meeting in
Okay.
December.
That's why, okay.
Yes.
Easy to get the two crossed out,
Correct.
but yes, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Are you ready to vote? Please indicate by your approval of the motion by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Or abstentions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is
Yeah, I need-
discussion
I need to
items.
sign this one, right?
I don't
Yes,
think we,
on every yellow tab.
All of you.
Oh, okay.
I don't think we added anything to the discussion items. Is there anything you'd like to add now?
Not this evening, Kurt.
No?
Is this name and signature, or is it
No, it's just signature.
We have been giving the public a chance to add things to a discussion items that are pertinent or anything? Is there any reason to have an executive session?
There is no reason to have an executive session tonight.
Thank you.
May I address the last agenda item, though, just to make the public aware of what we're gonna do in December?
Yep.
So we're gonna start with a new format of meeting for December and May in this year only. And what that will mean is that all boards will converge for an A&W meeting at 6 o'clock on December 17th for the purposes of hearing the superintendent's budget, the preschool budget, and the special ed budget, as well as hearing from the A&W auditors, and a brief presentation from the Leading and Learning Committee. Did I get that right?
Learners and Learning.
Learners and Learning Committee, which is really the committee that's been looking at the new pedagogy that we need to be moving towards as we're preparing our students for the future. And so after these common presentations, the boards will all break up into individual board meetings to conduct very limited business that they have to for monthly board orders, as well as minutes to the meeting and any other minimal agenda items.
Not in public.
So we feel like this is gonna be an
Feel free to ask.
effective way to work together as an A&WSU board. And we will repeat that in May when the boards have to reorganize and set up new A&W officers. So we wanted the public to be aware of that. That will happen at Vergennes Union High School. Certainly you're invited and hope to see you then.
Okay. Any other comments or questions before we adjourn? Now the big controversy. Do we need a motion to adjourn?
I don't think you
Do you know the answer or not?
I know
can
the answer.
declare.
No, we don't, but we're adjourned.
I know the